And then I believe the Liberty Bells inside this building right here.
Now take a look at that. You've seen photographs, this is the most famous bell in the world. You've seen photographs of it, drawings. Can you see that's not a crack? You see how wide it is? See the drill hole marks up and down that line? It's not a crack, it's an attempt to fix a crack. The procedure is called stop drilling. We're not sure the exact date. Somewhere in the late 1830s, early 1840s, the bell's still ringing in the tower, but they notice the tone's changing. And when they examine it, in that area, a hair width crack about 23 inches long is formed. Now, if you ring a bell in that condition, this is what's happening to the metal. It's rubbing against itself. It's causing a buzz or a hum. So to improve the tone, you widen the crack to stop the rubbing, and hopefully stop the crack from spreading. Big Ben in London has this repair. It's been working years with it. It's supposed to work on all bells. It did not work on this one. After all that hand drilling, that was hand drilled, there were no power tools. February 23rd, 1846, a Monday. It was a 3-day weekend, our first 3-day weekend, Monday holiday, the celebration of George Washington's birth. They intended to ring the bell all day long, but about noontime, the tone changed. When they examined it, a fracture had spread through the word and through the S and stow, the T and na, the RT and Y and Liberty and across the top. So that is the crack in the Liberty Bell. This is not. It's an attempt to repair one. The fatal crack that would silence the bell forever. Nobody alive has ever heard this bell ring. And of course, it'll never ring again. Well, how did it get in this condition? Well, first of all, you have to realize what bells were in the 18th century. The major means of communication. You didn't have radio or television. You couldn't pick up a telephone. A lot of people couldn't read a newspaper even if they could afford one. So important news was spread by ringing a bell. People would gather together, they'd do a reading, and that's how the word got out. You also have to realize how quiet it was. You had no aircraft, no automobiles, no motors or engines of any kind. You had horse hooves, wagon wheels, and people talking to one another, and that was it. So if you had a good bell, and this was a good bell, you might hear it 20 miles in every direction on a clear, cold night. So that's why bells were important. Now the building behind us, the building we now call Independence Hall, is the Pennsylvania State House. The 2 lower floors that you're looking at in front were built in 1732. The year the man standing in front of the building was born, George Washington. The tower area was completed about 19 years later. They needed a bell for it. You weren't really allowed to make bells in the American colonies under the British mercantile system, so the mother country had to be used for making bells. The bell was ordered from Whitechapel Foundry in the East End of London. It arrived here in 1752 and something was wrong. Now we're not sure what, because it was just another bell so they could keep strict records on it. 2 months on the North Atlantic on a sailing ship. If it was a rough crossing, maybe the bell was damaged. Maybe they dropped it unloading it. But more than likely what happened, when its test ringing it cracked, well this for sure, it sounded awful, it was unusable. They would order another bell from England, but they were impatient to get the bell for the tower. It was needed. So they bent the rules a little bit. Who was going to pick up the phone and call London? It had been invented yet. So a lot of things happened they didn't know about in London. They asked these 2 men, John Pass and John Stowe, 2 Philadelphia metal workers, to take that English bell, break it up, melt it down, and recast it. They did it once and didn't like the results. Started all over again, still didn't like the results, but stayed with it anyhow. So what you're looking at is their final effort. It was made here in Philadelphia by John Pass and John Stowe in 1753 from the English Whitechapel bell. Got it? It's recycled, basically. Inside the fabric of this is the English bell. Now the challenge for these 2 men was they never did this before. And as far as we know, this is the only bell they ever made. Pass and Stowe made flatware, candlestick holders, but most importantly, pots and pans. Copper and tin experience, and that's probably why they were selected. That's the bulk of the metal here. Notice the rough surface. That's not damage over the years. That's the original casting. But let's give these 2 men a lot of credit. For not being bell makers, they made a bell that worked extremely hard for the best part of 90 years. Now, one thing they made sure they got right from the Whitechapel bell is the inscription at the top of the crown. It's in the Old Testament, Leviticus 25th chapter, 10th verse. Proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. The final casting date is 1753, 23 years before the Declaration of Independence is signed. It's almost like a prophecy. If you ask anybody in the American colonies in 1753, you think you'll ever separate and go to war with Great Britain, they would look at you as if you were crazy. They were very content under British rule at that point. But as we all know, the events of the next 20 years changed that. And that's why on July 4th, 1776, first floor, 3 windows on the left, in the assembly room of that State House, the most important room in the United States of America, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were debated, adopted, and signed. They changed the history of the world now. Now, the big question is, did the Liberty Bell ring at all on July 4th, 1776? It sounds very patriotic. The bell swinging, people very excited. No, it didn't. And the reason we know it didn't is the men we call patriots, King George III called traitors. They were attempting to overthrow his government. That is treason, and they hang you for that. And what good is a revolution if everybody's swinging from a tree, the leaders especially? Get those delegates out of town. 4 days later, however, July 8th, behind that building, Colonel John Nixon of the Pennsylvania militia would read the Declaration in public for the first time anyway. Crowd grew to several thousand. They probably rang this bell and the other 10 bells in the city as well to summon the people to the reading. After the war was over and independence was gained, the bell just continued to work in the tower. It's a worn-out, tired old bell that really worked. And I say really worked. The bell in the tower now is a clock bell. The Centennial Bell of 1876. It rings on the hour. This communications bell, on many occasions, rang non-stop all day long. A birth, a death, a marriage in the British royal family. A British military victory. Calling the Pennsylvania Assembly to order. You can relate to this. 3 years ago this month, somebody died very suddenly in the British royal family. Who was that? Princess Diana. Now, her death 225 years ago would have signaled an all-day ringing of this bell. Not too much attention was paid to this bell until the 1830s. The abolitionists were meeting here in Philadelphia.